Hey everyone, you're here with Dr. Full Stack, and when we last left off, we created a page within our application that allows us to create a post that we can now post new information to our MongoDB database. So let's look at that in action. Now, I'm breaking up my web pages into Lego parts, right? So although this is the web page, the Lego part, which is responsible for the actual form, is the form Lego. And we call Legos components in this situation. So let's go to our component folder, and we'll be able to see that there is a Lego called form here. Bam. So within the Lego that we call form, we want for this information to end up in an API route, and the API route can handle all of the talking to MongoDB for us. So if I went ahead and created a new API route, just so that you can get used to creating API routes, I could have just reused the old one, but I want you to actually be able to do this so that you can get a job. So if I went to API folder, and then I create a new file called new post. So I'll create a file called new post.js. And this isn't to be confused with our page new post. This is the API new post. APIs are ways that applications talk to other applications. My application has to talk to the MongoDB application in this situation. So if you want to create an API within Next.js, it's super easy. Export default async function, and then we can give that function a name. So I'll say new post handler. We'll have a request and a response, and then the body of the function itself. Now at the very end, I do want to return res status of 200, and then for the information, whatever comes back as a response from MongoDB is what I'm going to put in here. All right, great. So at this point, if we were to save time, we could head over to the last time we made the connection to MongoDB, take this code, literally copy it, because we still have to connect to MongoDB, right? So none of that code changes. And then we do want to still connect to a client. We also want to connect to the same database, and we also want to utilize, as a matter of fact, all of this is relevant. So I'll take all of this code here and paste it here. Again, I'm doing this again so that you completely understand what's going on here. So we made a client connection to the database. Great, we're connected to the database. I hate saying the database in this case. Let's just say we're connected to the application that has our database. And in this case, it's the Mongo Atlas cluster, right? So the Mongo Atlas cluster is this project, FS Easy. Great. If we browse collections, we'll see a database, and that database is called FS Easy. So FS Easy DB. So we need to connect to this database. Well, how do we do that? Within here, if you look at this line, it says const DB. So I'm creating a variable called DB. I'm waiting for this client, which has a bunch of methods that are built into it once we establish the connection, to utilize a method called DB. And DB, as you can see here, creates a new DB instance sharing the current socket connections. All that means is it's going to connect to your database. So I'm going to give it the database name, which I have currently in my .env environment, so that that's not public. And I could just tell you, like, even if I wanted to switch this out for FS Easy DB, it would still work. All right. We're just making those things private for security reasons. And I want you guys to go into these interviews with standards that we're actually using today. at this point, we're going to instantiate a connection to the collection. All right, so the collection is like categories within your database. You can think of it as tables. So there's a collection called post. I didn't say that in my .env environment. I could just literally write post as a string here. Excellent. Now I've created a variable called date so that I can store the current date. I created a variable called time so that I can store the current time. And this is the code that I do need to edit. So stay with me, guys, because this is where things get pretty cool. So previously I was hard coding the information that I want to store in a database. But now I want to store the information that's coming from the client. So the way that I want to do that is I'm going to access the request object, right? So I'll say const, and I can say body, right? And then literally from the request body. Cool. But this may take a little long. The request body, we're assuming, is going to have the title, you know, the body, the content, everything that we've created in the post. So if I know that those things are going to be on the body, then I can just utilize destructuring and pull those variables out immediately. So I know I want title, right? Let me pull out title. I know that I want, I guess we can call it body in this case. I don't know if it's called body or content. Let me just double check from the front end page. New post, and then I go into form. Do we call it body or content? So we called it content. Okay, we called it content, so I'll keep it consistent. So over here, let's go back to the API that we're looking at. And that was here. Great. So we'll say title, content, and category. What was the last one? Sorry about my memory here. So last one was importance. Okay, so importance. Where are you? Let me go back to here. Importance. Okay. Okay. So now what we want to do is insert all of those into MongoDB. So title. We know that that's going to be title, right? And all of those are pretty much the way it's going to be. Here, time is going to be time. Okay. Hey everyone. When we last left off, we created an API route to enter data into the database from the post that we create on the front end. So here's our front end. It has a form. That form has title, content, importance, and category. Let me make sure that the API route is looking for importance, and yes it is. Great. So now at this point, we're going to take that information, send it to MongoDB. I can go ahead and create a variable here called response equals, and I may say wait. Now I'll put this response here so that we know when we create a post that it actually has processed. So let's go and test this out. If I head over to my application on the actual web browser, let me refresh, and let's go ahead and say